A diabetic tracks their blood glucose level QID, or 4 times each day, and records the following results, and these would be results for one day. 114 milligrams in one reading, 106 in another, 96 in a third, and 102 milligrams in the fourth reading. Find the mean and the sample standard deviation of the recorded blood glucose levels and round each answer to the 10th place. Let's go ahead and highlight the important information here. We've got 4 values and they're highlighted here, and we need to find the mean and the sample standard deviation of these values and then round correctly. Recall that mean is synonymous with average, isn't it? So we know how to find the mean of a list of values. We add them all together, find this total sum, and then we divide that by the number of numbers in the list, in this case 4. So we'll find the mean here in just a moment. Let's look at the formula for sample standard deviation, and it looks like this, and it looks like it might be a little tricky. Let's go ahead and highlight and talk about some of the symbols that we see in this and make sure we understand them all. The S here is just going to be sample standard deviation. That's going to be what we're solving for. This symbol right here looks pretty intimidating, but this symbol is the Greek letter sigma, and in mathematics it is telling us to take the sum of a list of numbers, a list of values. In this case, we're going to take the sum of what's in parentheses here. Let's talk about that next. Our x is just going to be each of our individual values that are given. So we'll start with 114. Next, we'll plug 106 in for that value. X bar is an interesting one here. X bar is another way of representing mean or average. And so what we're going to do here in the numerator of this fraction is we are going to subtract our average value from each of our individual values and add those all together after we have squared them. Finally, down in the denominator, we have an n here. N is going to stand for the number of numbers in our sample here. We've got 4 values, so our denominator is going to be n minus 1, or 3. So that's what we have to work with here. So let's go ahead and begin our calculations. Let's start by calculating our mean or our average. Mean is going to equal, average, and it's going to be represented by the symbol x bar. And in order to do that, let's go ahead and list our x values here. We're going to have a value of 114 and another value of 106, a third value of 96, and then a 102. And to find average, we're going to sum those, aren't we? And we're going to come up with a total of 418. So our mean, our x bar over here, is going to equal 418 divided by 4. And that's going to give us a value of 104.5. So that is our x bar. When working with standard deviation like this, it's often useful to build a little table and tabulate our results in the table. Let's go ahead and write down our x bar value here. That's going to be 104.5, and that's going to be the same for each of these in our table. And our next column in this table, let's go ahead and calculate what we need right here. We want to calculate x minus x bar, and so we're going to subtract 104.5 from each of our values, and we're going to come up with x minus x bar here is 9.5. 106 minus 104.5 is going to give us 1.5. 96 minus 104.5 is going to give us a negative number, isn't it? It's going to be negative 8.5. And then 102 minus 104.5 is going to give us a negative number as well, negative 2.5. So that's our x minus x bar. Now, we want all of our values to be positive, and one way to make them positive is to square them, and then we could take the square root again, and that's what's going to happen here. So we want x minus x bar squared in our next column. So we're going to take the square of 9.5 and we get 90.25. The square of 1.5 is 2.25. The square of negative 8.5 is a positive 72.25. And the square of negative 2.5 is 6.25. Now we come back over to our formula and we recall this symbol right here, the sum of our x minus x bar squared values. So what we want to do next is to take the sum of those four values that we just calculated. We add those four values up and we get a total of 171.00. If we want to put that in there, we don't really have to. Now we've got our sum of x minus x bar squareds. So we're ready to plug that into our original equation. So we can come up here and we can now calculate for s. S is going to equal the square root of our sum of x minus x bar squareds. That's this 171 value, 171, over, now we said that n is our number of numbers. We've got four numbers in the list. N minus 1, pretty straightforward. That's going to be 4 minus 1 or 3. So we now need to find out what 171 over 3 is. That equals 57. Finally, we're going to take the square root of 57, and we're going to get 7.5498, and that keeps going. We'll just sort of truncate that right there. And then we want this value rounded for our answer to the 10th place. So that's going to mean that our standard deviation is going to be approximately equal to 7.5. So there are our two answers. We've got a standard deviation and a mean. So we can write our answers up here. We have calculated that the mean of this list is equal to 104.5, and the standard deviation, the S, is approximately equal to 7.5, and that's our value rounded as the problem has asked us to do to the nearest 10th place. There is our final answer, and I hope this is helpful.